everybody, how you doing? We're back at Fallout Equestria. My Christmas break is over, which I realized I forgot to tell you guys about. Anyways, I decided to take a break for Christmas. Especially since at work, holiday season's busy for us. So I decided to focus more on that than the videos. But, Christmas is over. Holidays are going to start winding down. And my personal break from making videos is over too. Really should have remembered to tell you guys that shit. I'm the bad host.
My host dropped gracefully into a bow. Applebloom swiftly followed his example. I was in the company of a goddess. Not one of those blasphemous pseudo-goddess alicorn monsters. I found myself kneeling before the goddess of the sun, whom I prayed to since I was a little filly. Celestia herself. She was majestic beyond description. A tall, white, proper alicorn, whose mane and tail flowed with color, her flank emblazoned with the symbol of the sun itself. She was graceful, kind, and altogether sovereign. Please, she addressed us graciously, rise, my little ponies. It is a joy to see you. As my host stood, Princess Celestia, squee, moved around the table, eyeing the model favorably. So, this is to be Luna's new academy? Applebloom nodded nervously, unable to speak. It looks lovely. Applebloom squeaked. Thank you, Your Majesty. Celestia's ears perked. Oh, here she comes. If you would be so kind as to let me speak first. Of course, Your Majesty, my host said quickly. Celestia turned, and both Applebloom and her uncle followed the glorious princess's gaze. Princess Luna walked in between two curtains. Her dark blue colors looked striking, yet starkly out of place in the rest of the palace. She was much smaller than her regal older sister, or for that matter, than the pseudo-goddesses. Almost the size of a normal pony, in fact. While Princess Celestia was resplendent, Princess Luna struck me as cute. The sort of cute that I would have impure thoughts about if the pony in my head wasn't already too busy bouncing around Pinkie Pie style and letting off a barrage of squeeing noises. Sister, you called for me? Yes, Luna dear. I've been thinking about that school of magic you've been proposing, and I've decided to send all of your students to the moon. Luna froze, her mouth hung open, then slowly closed.
That's fucked up. That's not the kind of thing you joke about, Celestia. What the fuck?
You wouldn't. I could see the gears in her head start spinning. And you couldn't. Without the elements of harmony, you don't have anywhere near that kind of power, dear sister. What was going on here? Applebloom, apparently either not quite in on the joke, or simply unable to bear seeing Luna made uncomfortable, quickly spoke up. She means the Crescent Moon Canyon. Princess Celestia smiled, but tilted her head towards Applebloom with a look that suggested the regal princess hadn't wanted the young architect to spill that quite yet. Princess Luna shot her sister a look, then moved on to the table, her eyes going wide. This? She looked up with tears in her eyes. This is going to be the Luna Academy for Young Unicorns? A magical school of my very own? Just like yours?
Why is it always unicorns? Celestia already has her school of magic. What about them earth ponies? And them Pegasi? What about Luna's school of flying? You know? Right? Come on.
Princess Celestia smiled and nuzzled her younger sister. Happy birthday, little sister. Applebloom's mouth hung open until my host tapped his own with his hoof. Blushing, she waved a hoof over the model. Princess Celestia is given... She paused, looking up at the princess to make sure it was okay to speak. Princess Celestia smiled with a nod and softness in her eyes. Us Little Horn Valley and the Crescent Moon Canyon to build on. It's isolated, far away from any dangers. Or any villages.
Why not just build it in a like Celestia's Academy is in Canterlot? Why not just build it in a fucking city? I have a bad fucking feeling about this.
Princess Luna noted, giving her sister a gentler look, but a look nonetheless. And far away from Canterlot and your own school. Princess Celestia nodded. I wanted you to have this fairly, without ponies making the comparisons they would if the schools were side by side, and without the students being distracted by rivalry. The princess flicked her gaze to Apple Bloom as she nodded. And I know you were considering Ponyville, but I didn't want young colts and fillies wandering off into the everfree forest. Luna rolled her eyes. Come on, big sister. No filly is foolish enough to go wandering around that place. Have faith in my students. Apple Bloom was making the sort of face that suggested she really wanted to be someplace else. The only thing within a day's ride of Littlehorn are some zebra jungles. Yes, Princess Celestia nodded. There will be friendly zebras not far away if they need assistance, and soon several of your students will have baby dragons of their own. So if any pony needs to contact you, you'll only be a sneeze away.
I'm pretty sure dragon eggs aren't that easy to get a hold of here. And really, Spike's the only baby dragon we ever see, so I'm kind of sure that was a one-off. Ooh, boy.
We were airborne between Philadelphia and Manhattan. As much as I wanted to go straight to Ten Pony Tower, the warning that DJ Pony had sent me was at the front of my thoughts, so I had directed Calamity to take us to Junction R7 first. If something nasty was brewing in Shatterhoof, something that Homage thought I needed to take care of first, then I wasn't going to waste any time. That still left me a lot of time to think. And most of that time was spent thinking about the memory orb I had found beside poor Apple Bloom's skeleton. My inner pony had taken over a day to stop dancing at having seen the goddesses, and it was almost harder to prevent myself from reliving the memory over and over than it was to fight the urge for party-time Mintals. And at least with the latter, I had the help of simply not carrying any to take. The cravings came without an easy way to sate them, but this... I couldn't throw away a memory orb of the goddesses. It deserved to be enshrined. I momentarily
getting a little fanatical there, little Pip. You might want to back off a bit.
Transform it into a temple to Celestia and Luna with the memory orb as a sacred relic. It was a silly daydream, and it passed. I also caught myself revisiting the notion of Luna clopping me with her wings, only this time as a fantasy rather than a swear. I caught myself before my imagination could get too far, and punished myself by banging my head repeatedly against the side of the Sky Bandit until Calamity threatened to land. It took a while before the other implications of what I had seen started to sink in. Littlehorn. It was a name I had heard before in several contexts, but Watcher's words stood out. The massacre at Littlehorn broke Princess Celestia's heart. After that, nearly midway through the war, Princess Celestia decided she wasn't the right pony to lead Equestria anymore. So she stepped down, abdicated her position to her sister, Princess Luna. I looked around. Velvet Remedy was lost inside the Fluttershy memory orb once more. Firelight, her aura merely twice her size, had cradled herself against Velvet's left shoulder and was snoring loftily. I shared the Sky Bandit with Steelhooves and Zenith. Calamity was ahead, pulling us. Well, if there was any pony who would know, it was Steelhooves. What happened at Littlehorn? Steelhooves and Zenith both started at the question. They looked at each other before Steelhooves answered me simply. Disaster. I shivered, knowing I didn't really want to hear this, but part of me needed to. Tell me. Littlehorn was a school. Unicorns, fillies, and colts, many of whom were too young to even have their cutie marks, lived there, being trained by some of the best of Equestria's magicians. Steelhooves started slowly. One evening, around twilight, a little over 9 years into the war, a zebra convoy rolled into Littlehorn Valley. 24 zebra legionnaires and 3 large covered wagons. When they didn't respond to peaceful overtures, the matron of the school activated the school's defenses. They didn't know your language, Zenith abruptly interrupted. They weren't frontline soldiers. It was a refugee convoy. Mares and small zebra children just trying to get out of the killing zone. I know that, Steelhoof shot back harshly. They realized that when the first wagon was struck and they saw the dead. But by then it was too late. He turned to me. It was too late. The zebra convoy had assassins wearing zebra stealth cloaks. They had one, Zenith corrected. A father whose family was killed in your school's surprise attack. They only needed one, Steelhooves growled. The school was full of children, and the zebras set off a gas bomb inside. It was Canterlot in miniature. The striped bastards killed every pony in Littlehorn. I felt myself crying. Okay, please, I don't want to hear any more. They weren't paying attention to me. But then I wasn't being very assertive. I was still numb with heartache. Littlehorn had been the turning point of the war, and the pony in my mind was realizing with tearful slowness how Littlehorn had rippled out to destroy every pony it touched. I began to understand. The architect Applebloom's sense of guilt and how it steered her choices. And that would have been nothing compared to the guilt and sorrow of then Princess Celestia, who had herself chosen the location, or the effects on Princess Luna, whose beloved students were the ones slaughtered to the last. It was after Littlehorn that the damn zebras went totally manticore shit. Every fight became one to annihilation of one side or the other. We struck one wagon, and yes, it was a mistake. They massacred hundreds of small children, and then went completely insane over it. That had nothing to do with Littlehorn, Xanath said solemnly. The war had changed. It wasn't about coal or gemstones anymore. Coal or gemstones? But then that made a lot of sense. Zebras weren't like unicorns. They couldn't cast spells or use magic directly. They had to brew it into potions, infuse it into fetishes, or otherwise bind it into objects to get their magic to work. And with the possible exception of soul jars, gemstones were the ultimate receptacle for magical enchantment. Any society advancing through arcane sciences would require trains full of gemstones. That was easy for ponies. We had lands rich with them, rock farms for growing them. But if the zebra lands didn't have gems, but they did have coal. I was pulled out of my mental distraction when Steelhooves advanced on Zenith.
And so, that's basically my interpretation of rock farms. That, and given how dragons eat gemstones, there has to be a way to grow them. Or else, given the size and how many dragons there are, the fucking land would be depopulated with gemstones. There wouldn't be any. There just wouldn't be any. But, growing them, I also have the idea that the magic of the world, because it's a fantasy world, there's probably like ley lines and ambient magic and shit. I have a theory that other than growing them with earth ponies, that I kind of suspect that magic sort of clumps together, forming gemstones around. And that's one of my personal interpretations, other than the rock farm. But I'm fucking happy you included that. Hell yeah.
Then admit your whole damn species had a fucking mental break. Not mine, Zenith insisted. We saw that you ponies had fallen under the influence of the stars. No quarter could be given and no mercy expected from a nation under the sway of cosmic evil. What? I mouthed what Steelhoof screamed. Did you, or did you not, choose to follow the champion of the evil stars, Nightmare Moon? What? Are you... What? Steelhooves turned, stomping and pacing until Calamity once again threatened to land the Sky Bandit and give us all a talking to. Wait, I said slowly. Are you saying that the reason the war got so bad is because zebras couldn't tell the difference between Princess Luna and Nightmare Moon? From a struggle of resources to holy war in 10 seconds flat. They are not the same fucking pony, Steelhoof screamed at Zenith, although more now because he couldn't scream at the zebras of the past. We weren't following Nightmare Moon any more than Princess Celestia imprisoned Luna on the fucking moon for 1,000 years. The Steel Ranger was shaking. They are not the same. Velvet Remedy had come out of the Fluttershy orb and was looking on in confusion. Steelhooves turned to the two of us and barked. Tell her. They are not the same, I said firmly, then took note of the silence beside me. I turned to look towards Velvet Remedy. Honestly, she whispered, I was never really clear on that myself. I always figured it was some kind of psychotic break. Steelhooves sounded murderous. which, considering this was Steelhooves, actually scared me. Psychotic breaks don't come with physical transformations. I nodded in firm agreement. Unless you were Pinkie Pie's hair, I thought, remembering that weird change at the end of her argument with Twilight Sparkle. Steelhooves visibly shook. His voice changed from an angered yell to a low, even blade. Then there was never any real chance of diplomacy after that, was there? I could tell that behind his visor, his eyes were locked on Zenith's. The invitation to Shattered Hoof Ridge for peace talks. There was never going to be any peace talks, were there? Zenith's ears flattened. She tried to be reasonable, apparently realizing that this was no longer even an unfriendly argument. I was not there. Please remember that these were other people, zebras and ponies alike, not us. Answer the question. Zenith looked away. From the tales I was told, she sighed sadly. Peace was what was hoped, but there could only be peace if Nightmare Moon was removed. Unfortunately, the ponies sent the wrong princess to Shattered Hoof Ridge. The night turned infinitely colder. I waited, my nerves on edge for what Steelhooves would do. With a final growl, Steelhooves removed himself to the farthest end of the Sky Bandit and crouched down, pretending to sleep. Which I knew he didn't, but I thankfully played along. Y'all okay back there? Calamity called back. My answer echoed Steelhooves' answer to Night Poppyseed. No.
Yeah, this something always got... This part of this is kind of Celestia's fault. Because he never fucking told anybody what the fuck was going on with Luna and Nightmare Moon. 1,000 years after the whole Nightmare Moon debacle. For 1,000 years, she never fucking mentioned it. You can't just ignore something like that, because stories and ideas will take on a life of their own. You can't just bury it and expect everyone to forget. Especially those you don't have direct control over, like your own subjects. Like the zebras. It's like, whatever happened 1,000 years ago, Nightmare Moon fucked them up. And because Celestia didn't go, okay, zebra dudes, here's what happened. She didn't do that. And so the zebras formed their own mythology of what happened, their own idea, their own story about what happened and what's going on. And like, what's her name? Velvet Remedy said, it's not really clear. Like, some people think Luna was possessed. I personally think it was just Luna the whole fucking time. No possession, no nothing. Luna just had a bit of a breakdown. Like, I'm with the psychotic break department. But really, it's Celestia's fault because she doesn't fucking explain shit to you. She doesn't explain it to her own subjects. Like, she definitely didn't talk to the zebras or any of the other races. So, while the zebras are a bunch of crazy fucking mentalists, because they clearly can't just see, oh, hey, look, that's the pony. Like, we're told she's Nightmare Moon, but she seems alright. Like, fucking crazy-ass people. And I don't like them. But I can see where they're coming from. And it's partly Celestia's fault 1,000 years ago because she didn't give out her version of events to everybody. So, fucking Twilight had to learn about Nightmare Moon from what looked like a children's book. It certainly sounded like a children's book. So, this, in some weird way, actually comes back to Celestia from 1,000 years ago. I get it's a sad affair you don't want to talk about, but you got to get your story out there because people will come up with their own ideas. Like, everybody's at fucking fault because goddamn.
We picked up the signal near within an hour of setting down at Junction R7. It wasn't from Shattered Hoof. Automated distress call from Stable Tech, Stable 2. Message begins. The mechanized voice gave way to one I had written off ever hearing again. The voice of our Overmare. Little Pip, Velvet Remedy, if either of you can hear this, I pray you're still alive, still out there to hear this. Please, if you, or if any friendly pony can hear this, Stable 2 is under attack. We don't know who they are or where they came from, but they have somehow opened the front door and they are killing every pony inside. I've evacuated all the survivors into the security and Overmare's wing. But now that we are cut off from the orchard, we are running out of food. These invaders seem content to wait us out. If you can hear this, please save us. My blood turned to ice. I analyzed the signal. The broadcast was being piped through the same transmitter that the father of a dying colt had once tapped into from the cistern under the big Macintosh Memorial. The mechanical voice returned. Home. Message repeats. This is an automated distress call from Stable Tech, Stable 2. Message begins. Oh, goddesses. Calamity, turn now. We have to get to Stable 2. Fast. Little Pip, I'm about to collapse here. What's the... I pulled out my earbloom and played the message aloud. Within 10 words, Calamity was already banking and pulling us onto our new heading. No, Steelhooves whispered. Damn them, no. I swiveled towards my Steel Ranger friend. No what? And then I realized what crusade Elder Blueberry Saber had rushed off to the moment I was out of the way. I'm sorry, Little Pip. I did everything I could to make them believe taking Stable 2 was a mistake. I have been for decades. But after you two showed up, and they realized there was still a functional stable down there... This was your mission? I strode forward, my glare alone almost strong enough to disintegrate the Earth Pony ghoul. Assess if Stable 2 could be safely taken? He cringed back from me. I even tried giving them Stable 29 instead. I rocked on my hooves, my mind teetering on the edge of a dark chasm as I struggled to remember if, in my own hack of Stable 29's entrance, I might have left clues that the tech-savvy agents of the Ministry of Wartime Technology could have used to figure their way through my own stable's door. Velvet Remedy wrapped a hoof about me, holding me back. If the Steel Rangers are assaulting our home, she said with steel in her voice, we might need him. Or maybe...
I have a question. Whatever happened to that little stronghold you guys had? You know, the one you put the plasma cannon on? You might want to go get that plasma cannon. Like, seriously, you guys might want to go get the plasma cannon. You're going to need it. Power armor's fucking tough.
It's just best we drop you off here, Calamity called back, fixing Steelhooves with an even glare. 'Cause I'm heading to Stable 2, and when I get there, I'm planning to kill me a whole lot of Steel Rangers.
Seriously. Fuck the Brotherhood of Steel. And the Steel Ranger. Like, what? Okay, there's a lot of reasons you could want a vault. We're probably going to learn Blueberry's reasoning later, so I'm going to end this here. What the fuck is going on?